The year was 2011. I've been snorting heroin for about 3 or 4 months. Uh, Now, this girl I was seeing is the one who got me into it. Now, when I say this girl I was seeing, who we'll call Stacy, I don't want to give her real name. I don't want to get sued. Um, she wasn't really a girlfriend. She was more like a friends with benefits kind of thing that we didn't really like each other, but she used me because I had a job and I had money, and I used her because she had connections to drugs. And so we were codependent. Um, she got me started on snorting heroin. Now, at this point in my life, I was a raging alcoholic. I was fat, overweight, and I was basically a zombie. So I wasn't in my right mind, okay? And she lived close by. She had drug connections, but she was just a raging psychopath. When we weren't doing drugs, we were either arguing, screaming at each other, or we were having sex. Um, and most of the time, we were just doing drugs. So she introduced me to heroin. I dabbled in pills and stuff and smoked a lot of weed, but mostly at this point in my life, I was just an alcoholic. I got drunk pretty much every night. But I managed to be functioning. I managed to keep a job during this time. It wasn't a hard job. Uh, and so my life was just complacent. You know, I would get drunk every night and get fucked up, and it wasn't really affecting my life at this point. But I was miserable. So, we drive to this neighborhood, this really bad neighborhood in Pennsylvania, this town called Chester. We'd pick up our drugs, and, that was always terrifying for me because we were in my car, and, anytime we went up there, we could get robbed or arrested. And so I was snorting heroin for 3 or 4 months. And then I remember the first time I shot up, uh, I had picked Stacy up, and we had driven to South Philly. And we met up with this other girl who was a friend of Stacy's, some skanky chick with no fucking personality, And we got a couple bags of heroin. I remember we drove to this hotel outside of the Philadelphia airport. We drove to this hotel and parked in the parking lot. And at this point, they had both been shooting up for like forever, but I was always too scared to do it. But on this day, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. And I asked Stacy if she could shoot me up. Now, she didn't want to because she didn't want me shooting up and, getting super addicted to it. But I was like, you know what? I drove all the way out here. I'm pretty sure I had paid for most of it. So can you please shoot me up? Now, I was terrified of needles. I mean, who isn't? So I had her do it. I think she grabbed a iPhone cord that was lying on the floor of the car and started tying my arm. And I had to look away because I couldn't watch this happen. She pricked me, and she took it out, and I just kind of sat there for a minute, and then all of a sudden it just hit me, and it hit me so fucking hard. And I remember just closing my eyes, and I swear I could see like orange clouds. I could just see orange. Like I was just in a whole different mind state. It was like nothing I'd really felt before. It was like I imagined what being in the womb must feel like. And I remember opening my eyes and thinking like, this is amazing, but I feel like I'm dying. Like it was that intense. And I remember running out of the car or hobbling out of the car and just puking all over the parking lot, getting back in the car. And after I had relaxed a little bit, I was just in complete bliss. So basically, this went on for the next 6 months. I never really learned how to shoot myself up, so I was reliant on this girl. I relied on this girl tremendously to shoot me up. So, I could never really break up with her for more than a week without eventually calling her and saying, hey, can we pick up some bags? Because, it was, again, a codependent thing. We didn't like each other, but we needed each other. I had money, and she had the drug connections, and so she would shoot me up, and it began it was like a 5-6 month period, and she would shoot me up. Sometimes she couldn't find a vein in my arm, so she'd shoot me somewhere else, like in the leg, or sometimes she'd try to shoot me in the arm, and she'd miss, and there'd be a big black bruise on my arm. And this went on. Now, I wasn't at this point doing it daily. It was a couple times a week, and I was managing my life, and I was drinking in between all of it almost every night. So, that was a fucking mess. So finally one night, I sent her out in my car. We were at her apartment, and I sent her out in my car to go pick us up, to score for us, while I waited at the apartment, because I wanted to drink. Now, she had a problem with my drinking. Okay, for some reason that wasn't okay, but doing heroin was okay. So she drove away. I had three cans of Four Loko, which was cheap, and it got you pretty drunk pretty fast, but it was just so fucking nasty. I can't believe I drank that shit. There's just nothing good about that stuff. So I drank maybe a can and a half by the time she got back, and that's all I remember. That's the last thing I remember is her getting back. Apparently what happened is she shot me up. She didn't know I'd been drinking. And I guess she said my face started going blue. And I guess I started convulsing or something on the ground. And my face was going blue. She said I was trying to swallow my tongue. And she called her neighbor. Now, her neighbor happened to be a nurse. So she came over, dialed 911, started giving me mouth to mouth. And the next thing I remember is waking up, and there were people carrying me, and I started, pulling shit out. I guess there were tubes. They had tubes in me or something, and I started pulling shit out or whatever. And I remember just fighting, just waking up and being pissed off and fighting the people that were carrying me, and being so fucking confused. And I remember slowly the confusion would stop, and it was like I was in black, and then the black started getting smaller and smaller, and more light started coming in, and I started to see everything. And by this point, they had put me in the ambulance on a stretcher, and it started to hit me what had happened. And I remember her calling me, and she was that girl Stacy, as we're calling her in the story. And I remember her screaming something to me, and just being in the ambulance and thinking, this has to stop. I guess, apparently I had overdosed, and they'd shot me up with Narcan or whatever. And I tried to keep it hidden from my family. I told them I had had a seizure. Now, this wasn't my only trip to the hospital at this point. I had a time where I couldn't breathe and went to the hospital. So they knew something was up because I had never had a seizure before in my life. And eventually they found out what had been going on. And that was the first time in my life that I went to rehab. Okay, next story.